Heather.
Hello.
Welcome to the ExchangeWire kitchen.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you very much for coming in, and thank you for your time. I'm really pleased to have you on the show. We've got loads to talk about today, but first, all importantly, what coffee have you chosen?
Oh, so I've gone for the latte. My husband makes the best coffee, and we make it on the hob, and we make it really, really strong, but we make it with milk and not water, and it is the best, and that is my absolute favourite. So, latte for me. Thank you very much.
Latte. Well, yeah. I hope it gets close to your husband's brew, but that sounds delightful. I'm having my usual morning flat white, which is become my standard choice for recording, and I've already had 2 espressos, so I'm ready for a chat.
Yes, definitely. We'll start talking at a rate of knots.
Exactly. I will certainly be paying attention, which is the subject today. We're going to talk about attention. You, to start off with, tell us a little bit about Newsworks and what you do there.
Yep. So Newsworks, we're the marketing body for the UK's national news brands, and essentially our role is to cheerlead all the amazing content that our news brands come out with every single day, and we really cheerlead all the content that comes out. It's a really diverse breadth of journalistic content, from fashion to football to politics, across all of their platforms. So, it's not just newspapers, obviously, anymore, but it's audio, podcasts. So we kind of do a big sell to the industry, and really to get investment back into the newsrooms, because every time people put campaigns into news brands, that is what funds the journalists creating all this great stuff.
Exactly. Well, that's really interesting. And you also have, you do quite a lot of studies into what's working for news brands, how brands can best leverage kind of being alongside quality news. And we're going to talk about attention today and the importance of attention. We are in an era when the focus on metrics is changing, I think. We're going from, clicks and reach into kind of deeper research, deeper metrics, attention being one of them.
Yeah.
First off, why was it so interesting for you to go into attention, and tell us a little bit about the study?
So I think attention is just absolutely fascinating, because it's increasingly so scarce. So certainly over my lifetime, information is infinite. We just create more and more and more data, more and more and more content. But if you think about an individual's amount of attention, is finite. So it's becoming more and more difficult to grab someone's attention. And I think when you do have someone's attention, you can really translate that into power and into profit. We've seen that, globally with individuals, but also it's something that brands can do. So I think attention is really important. It's really hard to do, but then when you do achieve high attention, it's incredibly valuable. Yeah. And the other side of it is that news brands have historically always got high attention every single day. What happens and what the journalists say in the papers really matters. All other media, all eyes turn to it on a daily basis. So it's interesting from that perspective. But the other thing about news brands is that they're really effective for advertisers. And so I was really keen to explore whether those two things were linked. Got really high attention, really high effectiveness. Is the attention part of what drives that effectiveness? So we teamed up for this study, we teamed up with Lumen, who are attention experts, and then Peter Field, who is the guru when it comes to advertising effectiveness. And when we set the brief, the sparks were really flying between them as they were trying to work out how from a methodological point of view, we could explore this. And I do think there's a lot of research about attention already, a lot of amazing research. But I think what was unique about what we attempted to do is that, and Lumen talk about this so beautifully, but they say, attention isn't just what you see, it's what you see and you remember. Something has to go on in the brain for you to actually give, for you to give something attention. And so we wanted to see, not only how high attention mattered for what people saw, but how did that then influence people? So we looked at purchase funnel, so awareness, consideration, preference and action intent. So how does that attention actually impact how you feel about a campaign? But then most importantly, how that then translated to business outcomes. So what the work that Peter did for us with all the attention data from Lumen was able to really explore how the campaigns that had high attention were able to drive market share, pricing power, profit, metrics like that, and brand effects. And that's what I think is really important. It was the full loop. What people give attention to, how that influences their behaviour, and then how that fuels a brand's bottom line. And I think that that is hopefully what we've been able to explore with this study.
Yeah, and it's such, that's such an interesting cycle, I suppose, from, the attention which is desired, and it's what we're looking for in advertising, really. It's what people are wanting. But then that impact and that getting to that business outcome. The link between that and like the quality news brands as well, how do you feel that fits in, and how do you feel that they are, how well are they standing in when it comes to attention?
Yeah, so like I said, news brands have historically always got high attention, and I think it's because attention to ads is always a byproduct to the attention to the surrounding content. So ads always get the benefit of the halo effect in the way that the ads can interact with the content in which they're in situ. So for us, it will be the journalism. So high quality journalism, if this is something that people are engaged with and they're reading, whether that's on a paper or on a screen or on a video, it will mean slower scroll speeds, which will mean that those ads in situ will get more attention. So, like I said, it's not what you see, it's what something has to happen for you to notice it, and that's why the scroll speed matters. You almost want to get over, definitely over 2 seconds for that brain activity to happen for you to see. And what we found is that both display ads and video ads got over that 2 second threshold, which meant compared to, I think we compared it to the next 500 sites by volume of impressions. So again, just the tip of the iceberg. So all the results that we found, which were hugely positive, were all pretty conservative, because if you think that a long tail, millions of sites that you can be on, the news brands were getting stronger time spent, stronger dwell time, and therefore higher attention per 1,000 seconds. So higher APM, as they would call it.
So interesting. And so, tell us a little bit about the methodology for the study as well.
Yeah. So Lumen looked at our 12 national news brand sites against a bank of, like I said, next top 500 sites by volume impressions in the UK, 2023 and 2024. We just looked at what the increased uplifts were to attention. So we saw that display ads got 40% more attention. But they were also able to link their data to brand metrics data. So brand metrics, amazing company, they do exactly what they say on the tin. And so we knew that it was a link between attention, because brand metrics were measuring against a bank of hundreds of news brand campaigns, against a base of thousands of non-publisher campaigns, and they were able to see what the uplift was because of that attention. How did that improve awareness scores for those campaigns, consideration, preference, action intent? All of them went up. Consideration went up very strongly, and action intent went up by 1/3 for those ads in news brand campaigns. So that was really telling. But then what Peter was able to do is we looked at IPA data bank case studies. So again, I'd say tip of the iceberg. So the IPA data bank is a small pool of campaigns, but it's the best bank that we can get to really granular evidence of what worked and why. So he took 10 years worth of campaigns in the IPA data bank, and he gave each of them essentially an attention power rating based on the media mix. So Lumen were able to say, what were the scores for each of the media, and we'll see what the weights were in that campaign, so it got an overall score. And we basically divided the campaigns in half, those that had got high attention media and those that had low. And we were able to compare them, and he was able to see that actually when it came to things like market share, the higher attention campaigns overall got 12% better market share, uplift in market share, than those with low attention. And we did a similar exercise where we then added news brands to the mix. So again, to see how does news brands affect those business outcomes. And the results were staggering, really, because the first thing was that even within high campaigns, so you're using TV, cinema, radio, news brands still improved all the business and brand outcomes. But if you had a low attention campaign, and that is chiefly a digital campaign, the metrics went up staggeringly. So 64% uplift to the brand metrics, so things like trust, quality, brand image, and they're all really important, because when you get strong brand effects, you get strong business effects. They went up by 50%, the business effects, and then for profit, it went up by 89%. So the learning for us there is, if you've got a digital campaign, it's a no-brainer. News brands should be part of that digital campaign because they're being high attention are really able to really drive up all of your commercial business metrics. They work really hard for you in that mix.
And it's a really interesting point. And it's, we've discussed a lot about the future of quality media, and I've done some panels at ATS about how news brands compete in the attention era, and also with discussions around brand safety and reach. This constant battle with the social platforms for people's attention, for where they go to get their news, and then why to put adverts on a quality news site. How do you communicate this, and how do you get the message across regarding the importance of like you said, quality, attention, the well-trusted news brands compared to cheap reach?
I think it's a really good point because, as I said, there's a lot of research out there already, and how do you get attention for your piece of research? Yeah. There's an awful lot out there. I think one of the things that caught the industry's attention about this study, and where I feel like it really did spark conversation, which all good research should do, it should trigger conversation, is that we tracked ad spend over a 10-year period. And Lumen were able to give us norms for each of the media, and we were able to track over time what was the ad spend by AA Walk ad spend. And we could see that over a decade there's been this flip between investing in high attention media, it was like 70% 10 years ago, and that's now down to around 30%, versus this huge increase in investment into low attention media. There's a couple of caveats for that, because low attention media is not a bad thing, right? It's the beauty of media planning, is that every single media has strengths, and in the combination of those media, that will deliver whatever outcome you're after. So low attention media is really, really important. But our question is that balance right? If we know that high attention media contributes to commercial effectiveness, and we as an industry are supposed to be using creativity to focus on commercial effectiveness, should we be putting only 30% of ad spend into the likes of TV, radio, news? So I think what we did is we challenged the industry on that balance. Yep. All media counts, all media is relevant, but has the dial gone too far? I think is the question we asked, and that obviously has triggered debate, which is really, really healthy and positive.
Yeah, it's I told you before we were recording that people reference this study when I speak to them, particularly in news brands, talking about that piece of how do you pair the brand piece with quality news, and people have brought the attention study up. They are talking about the importance of it now more than ever, and how do you take that out to people? How do you make use of the findings?
We've started a lot of conversations within agencies. I think it's always really interesting to get a planning perspective as well. So to hear Peter talk about effectiveness generally and where that's going, and broadly speaking, it is in decline. So why he thinks that is, I think people take note of that. But it's also really good to get the planning perspective to go, right, how do we make the choices that we do, and what is the importance of news within that mix? Because I feel that we're almost on a tipping point. And in a positive way, I think that it is really good that people are looking at the news industry going, actually, in 2026, journalism is really, really important, and we as an industry should be funding it. I'd argue it's more important now than it has ever been. So to have well-funded newsrooms, I think, is paramount at a big broad level. But it's also really good and effective for advertisers. So it's kind of a dual story. I always like to end when I'm presenting the work to say, it's really important that journalists put the attention in the world, our attention on things that matter in the world. Right? That's ultimately their goal. So it isn't. There's kind of the two layers. There's the advertising level, but then there's also that wider kind of role in society that I think is important as well. So I think that resonates with people. So an interesting one.
Yeah. So let's talk some of the concerns around news brands and quality news brands. Bountiful Cow did a really interesting study as well, Relative Advantage Unblocked, which I talk about a lot because I think it's fascinating.
I'm so glad you mentioned that one. It's such a good study.
Isn't it? It's another one that's kind of a lot of people have spoken about, and I think, our agencies can still be working on historic block lists that are kind of really detrimental to the news industry. The anecdote I wheel out every time is the football coverage being blocked because it contains the word shot or shoot, and it's this is the stuff we have to get over. But it's kind of, is that a conversation you're having a lot as well? Is it you doing a lot of persuading around the brand safety?
I think it's really important to talk about it because so much to talk about. There is I think that the word block lists are getting worse, not better, in that. Although at the same time, people are talking about how the fact that they're not relevant, that they're not there. There are so many layers within every single news brand of both human and automated protection that mean that they are naturally brand safe places to put your advertising. And it is just crazy how you would want to be in the newspaper against the highest attention articles. You'd want to be near the front of the paper, and that's where people give attention to, and that's where we know is the most commercially effective place to be putting your ad. But that same article online, you're avoiding completely, and so it doesn't make any sense because the Bountiful Cow study, and there's others, Stagwell's proved it as well, is it's about the environment, not necessarily the content. So you get a really positive benefit if you're in a high quality environment like a news website. People trust that news website, and I think the brand element is really important. Exactly. So anything that's kind of written by those journalists within that brand is kind of trusting. But then when it comes to the content, because it's all under that halo of the brand, people are not. People are smarter than I think we give them credit for. Just because a brand is advertising next to a piece about Trump doesn't mean that they are in any way endorsing a certain politician's viewpoint. There isn't a link. What they're doing is they're supporting the journalism that allows you to tell that story. So I think when it comes to attention, we really need to be reminding people, if you want to get the full benefit of news brand attention, you should be removing your word block listings. You should be trusting the news brands. They will keep you safe. They will make sure that your ad is placed in the perfect place for your campaign and kind of leave it to it. But some of these word block lists are going into the tens of thousands. And if that is then impacting the way that journalists feel that they are reporting, because if you can't use the word is, for whatever reason, we have a huge problem. Journalists should be able to write as they feel free, knowing that they're telling the best story possible.
Yeah, and it's, works both ways, because your block list, your advertising could go anywhere else across, all over where you won't know, black box, there's so many questions around it that it's,
It's not just newspapers, it's the same for radio and TV. Yep. It's really heavily regulated. You cannot put toxic content in those places, and if you do, you get called out for it. And I think we are so lucky in the UK to have such a strong regulated news industry. It's not something that we should be taken for granted for. So I think, again, to your point, areas of media are heavily regulated and really are brand safe, and others are not. So
yeah, and I loved your point actually about the audience being smarter than we give them credit for. It's so true. People don't, that just shows the level of kind of overcaution and protection around these things that doesn't need to exist, and is to the detriment ultimately of financing quality titles that we know and want to continue the practice of journalism. We want to continue. I could get on my soapbox for hours here. I might do on another podcast.
I'll be with you all of the way. I think it's such an important point. The football is coming this summer, and brands want to be around that content and want to be around all the fantastic opinion pieces and all of the drama, and you really do need to revisit those block lists and kind of. I think even when people are trying to put smarter kind of realms around them, even they can be detrimental. So I really do think it is about working with news brands, on those campaigns to just make sure that, your ads are going to be where they're going to be most effective.
Yep, and where most attention is paid.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. Well, Heather, I'll wrap us up. I'm going to have you back later in the year because I think we could probably do 3 or 4 of these.
Yes,
I'd love to keep on chatting.
There's definitely more we could talk about.
But yeah, for the sake of attention in the short form, I'll cut it there. But thank you so much. That was a real pleasure. And yeah, best of luck with getting the word out there.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you.